5 dates deep. The coffee shop was deliberately neutral, selected with the same careful strategy Dante used for all his breakups, public enough to prevent a scene, private enough for dignity, with multiple exits, visible from every seat. He'd arrived 15 minutes early to claim the corner table, back to the wall, facing the door. 5 dates was his limit when the spark wasn't there. Any less seemed cruel, any more seemed crueler. Shelly arrived precisely on time. Her punctuality, one of the things he'd initially found attractive, before it started feeling like pressure, like expectation, like a clock counting down to something he couldn't name. She wore the red dress from their third date, the one he'd complimented, and Dante felt the familiar twist of guilt that came with ending things with someone who'd done nothing wrong except fail to ignite that particular chemical reaction in his brain.
Hey.
She said, sliding into the chair across from him, her smile bright as a surgical lamp.
You sounded serious on the phone? Everything okay?
The script was already in his mouth, practiced in his bathroom mirror that morning until the words lost their meaning, became just sounds.
Shelly, you're amazing.
Oh!
The word escaped her like air from a punctured lung.
This is that conversation.
I'm sorry, you really are incredible, smart, beautiful, funny.
But not for you.
Her voice remained steady, conversational, but something in her eyes shifted, pupils dilating despite the afternoon sun streaming through the windows.
5 dates. That's your limit, isn't it?
He hadn't told her about his rule, but somehow she knew. The coffee in his stomach turned acidic, burning its way back up his throat.
It's not you.
It's not me. It's you.
She finished, still smiling, though the expression no longer reached the upper half of her face, like a mask that only covered her mouth.
Classic. Clean. Efficient. Like everything else about you, Dante. Your apartment with its minimalist furniture, your color-coded calendar, your meal prep Sundays, your 5-date rule for women who don't make your dick hard enough.
The vulgarity surprised him. She'd been so refined, so careful with her words. This was like watching a different person emerge from inside a chrysalis made of manners.
That's not, I just don't feel.
The spark.
She said, leaning forward, her perfume suddenly cloying. Too sweet, like flowers left too long in a funeral home.
You don't feel the spark. But Dante, sparks can be manufactured. All you need is the right accelerant.
She stood, gathering her purse with the same precise movements she'd used to fold her napkin at dinner, to apply her lipstick in his hallway mirror, to straighten his tie. That one time they'd attended his work function together.
I understand completely.
She said, her voice warm as bath water.
These things happen. No hard feelings.
She leaned down and kissed his cheek, her lips dry as paper, leaving no mark, but somehow feeling like they'd branded him. Then she was gone, the bell above the door chiming her exit, and Dante sat alone with 2 full cups of coffee and the sensation that he'd just made either the best or worst decision of his life. The first sign something was wrong came 3 days later. Dante's alarm didn't go off, his phone dead, despite being plugged in all night. He arrived at work 40 minutes late to find his keycard deactivated and security waiting with a banker's box of his belongings.
What the hell is this?
He asked Harry from HR, who wouldn't meet his eyes.
We received the photographs, Dante, the ones from the company retreat, what you did to those interns.
Harry's face had gone the color of spoiled milk.
Legal says we're lucky you're not pressing charges for wrongful termination. Just take your things and go.
What photographs? What interns? Harry, I didn't.
They came from your email account, timestamped during the retreat. Your face, clear as day.
But Dante had never done anything inappropriate with anyone at the company, had been homesick during the retreat with food poisoning, had the medical records to prove it. Except when he pulled out his phone to show Harry, the records were gone. His entire medical history had been rewritten, showing perfect health, perfect attendance at the retreat, perfect opportunity for crimes he'd never committed. His best friend Ruben wouldn't answer his calls. When Dante went to his apartment, Ruben opened the door just wide enough to show the baseball bat in his hand.
The police came by.
Ruben said, his voice stripped of 10 years of friendship.
Showed me the videos. You in my apartment when I wasn't home? Going through Renee's underwear drawer? What the fuck, man? My girlfriend's underwear?
Ruben, that's impossible. I don't have a key to your place.
The videos show you using the spare from under the mat.
Ruben's knuckles were white on the bat handle.
The one only you knew about? Stay away from us. Stay away, or I swear to God.
The door slammed, the deadbolt clicking with finality. His bank accounts were frozen. Identity theft, the manager explained, apologetic but firm. Someone had taken out 17 credit cards in his name, maxed them all on purchases that would make a DEA agent blush. His credit score had dropped to double digits. His apartment complex began eviction proceedings for lease violations he'd never committed. Noise complaints from dates that corresponded to times he could prove he was elsewhere. Except the proof kept disappearing, videos deleting themselves, alibis developing amnesia. His mother called, sobbing. Someone had sent her photographs. Dante at places he'd never been, with people he'd never met, doing things that made her voice break when she tried to describe them.
The priest showed them to me.
She whispered.
Father Bernard said they were mailed to the church, addressed to me. 30 photographs, each one worse than the last. That poor dog, Dante. What did you do to that poor dog?
He hadn't done anything to any dog. He loved dogs, but the photographs existed, his face photoshopped with uncanny precision onto scenes of horror that made his stomach revolt. Except when experts examined them, they swore they weren't doctored. Completely authentic, pixel perfect real. His neighbor, Mrs. Woods, stopped making eye contact. The teenager at the coffee shop flinched when he entered. His social media filled with messages from strangers who'd heard what he did, though what he'd supposedly done changed with each message. Animal abuse, child endangerment, elder fraud, crimes that grew more baroque and impossible with each accusation. Then came the call from Detective Morrison.
We need you to come in for questioning regarding the disappearance of Shelly Brennan.
The name hit him like ice water in the veins.
Shelly? She's missing him?
Has been for 2 weeks. You were the last person to see her. Coffee shop on 5th Street. We have the security footage.
2 weeks. But he'd seen her just 3 days ago, hadn't he? Time had become elastic, unreliable. His phone showed calls he didn't remember making, texts he didn't remember sending. His calendar had appointments he didn't remember scheduling, then missing. At the station, they showed him the security footage. There he was, at the coffee shop. But the timestamp showed 2 weeks ago, and the conversation, the audio was clear, wasn't a breakup. He was threatening her. His voice, his face, his body language, aggressive, menacing. Shelly cowering, terrified, then running from the shop while he sat there smiling. But that wasn't what happened. He knew it wasn't. Except knowing and proving had become different countries with no bridge between them. They released him after 24 hours. No body, no crime. But the damage was complete. His life had been methodically dismantled like a clock, taken apart by a child who didn't care about putting it back together. He lived in his car now, the apartment gone, his possessions reduced to what fit in a backpack. His reflection in windows showed someone he didn't recognize. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, the look of someone whose reality had been poisoned at the root. That's when he saw her. Shelly, very much not missing, sitting in a restaurant window, laughing over wine with a man Dante didn't recognize. She looked directly at him, raised her glass in a mock toast, and mouthed words he could read through the glass.
Spark enough for you?
The rage that flooded him was nuclear, absolute. Not hot, but cold, freezing him from the inside out until he felt crystalline, pure, reduced to a single purpose. He followed her for 3 weeks, learning her real life, the one she'd hidden during their 5 dates. She wasn't a marketing manager. She was something else, something that specialized in destroying lives for money, for fun, for the aesthetic pleasure of watching someone unravel, thread by thread. Her apartment was a shrine to her victims, dozens of them, their photos covering one wall like trophies. Men who'd rejected her, dismissed her, failed to appreciate her particular brand of attention. Each photo had a date, a method, an outcome. 3 suicides, 5 institutionalizations, 1 missing person who was probably in several pieces in various dumpsters across the city. Dante's photo was there, recent, with notes. 5 dates.
Standard dismantling. Possible escalation to phase 2 if resistance continues.
Phase 2, he learned from her journals, involved his family. Ruben, Renee, everyone he'd ever cared about. Their lives poisoned by association, their reputations destroyed by increasingly elaborate fabrications. The solution came to him with the clarity of divine revelation. He learned her routine, her habits, the way she took her coffee, oat milk, 2 Splenda, cinnamon, the route she jogged, Riverside Park, always alone, always at dawn, the password to her apartment building, her ex's birthday, the first one she'd destroyed, patient 0 in her epidemic of orchestrated ruin. The sedative was easy to acquire. His destroyed reputation had unexpected benefits, connections to people who dealt in chemical solutions to human problems. He slipped it into her coffee at the shop where she worked on Tuesdays, the one place she felt safe, surrounded by witnesses who would swear she'd left alone, walked home normally, showed no signs of distress. She woke in her own apartment, but not as she'd left it. Dante had redecorated. Every surface was covered with mirrors, hundreds of them, reflecting her image into infinity. But they weren't normal mirrors. Each one was actually a screen, showing videos he'd compiled over his 3 weeks of surveillance. Her real face, not the one she wore for dates. The face that smiled while destroying lives, that laughed at security footage of her victims breaking down, that practiced tears in the mirror for police interviews.
Hello, Shelly.
He said from behind her, though his voice came from speakers hidden throughout the room. creating a surround sound effect that made it impossible to locate him.
Let's talk about sparks.
She tried to move, but found herself secured to her own dining chair with zip ties, the plastic digging into her wrists with each struggle. The same chair where she'd sat planning his destruction, writing the emails that cost him his job, editing the photos that ended his friendships, crafting the digital evidence that had turned his life into kindling.
Dante,
Her voice was steady, unafraid.
this won't end well for you.
Nothing ends well for me anymore. You made sure of that.
He stepped into view, and she saw what 3 weeks of focused rage had done to him. He'd lost weight, muscle definition showing through skin like rope under silk. His eyes had gone somewhere else, somewhere past human, past animal, into something more fundamental.
But I learned from you, studied your methods. You're an artist, really. The way you destroy someone's life while making them look crazy if they complain. Masterful.
So what now? You kill me, they'll know it was you.
Kill you?
Dante laughed, the sound like glass breaking in reverse.
No. Death is too simple, too clean. You taught me that. Death ends suffering. We don't want that.
He pulled out his phone, showed her the screen. Her bank accounts drained, her social media filled with posts she hadn't made, racist screeds, conspiracy theories, detailed confessions of crimes that would make anyone who read them step back in horror. Her professional contacts, all receiving emails from her account with attachments that would ensure she never worked again.
Your cloud storage was particularly interesting.
He continued, scrolling through files.
All those victims, all that evidence currently being uploaded to a public server with your full name and address attached. The families of those 3 suicides are going to be very interested in what you did to their loved ones.
For the first time, fear flickered across her face.
You don't understand what you're doing. Those people deserved.
What? To have their lives destroyed for the crime of not wanting a 6th date?
He crouched in front of her, close enough that she could smell the sleepless weeks on him, the diet of rage and caffeine, and prescription stimulants stolen from evidence lockers of cops who owed him favors from his former life.
You're a parasite, a virus in human form, but viruses can be quarantined.
The next part was delicate, requiring precision. He'd practiced on cadavers acquired from a medical student whose life Shelly had destroyed 2 years ago, who was eager to contribute to her comeuppance. The paralytic agent was injected directly into her spinal cord, a technique that would leave her conscious, aware, but unable to move anything below her neck. Temporary, he assured her, just long enough for what became clear when Ruben arrived, responding to texts from Dante's phone that he'd never sent, messages confessing to everything, begging for forgiveness, claiming to have proof of his innocence in his apartment. Harry from HR received similar messages. Father Bernard, his mother, everyone who'd abandoned him, drawn by the promise of explanation, of evidence that Dante wasn't the monster they'd been led to believe. They found Shelly surrounded by her wall of victims, paralyzed in her chair with Dante's confession playing on loop on every screen. Except it wasn't his confession. It was hers, deep-faked with the same technology she'd used on him, admitting to everything, explaining her methods, naming names, providing passwords, revealing where she'd hidden the original, undoctored evidence that would clear her victims' names.
She did this to herself,
Dante told them from the doorway. His hands clean, his DNA nowhere in the apartment, thanks to the hazmat suit he'd worn. now dissolved in acid 3 miles away.
Check the security footage. She's been alone all day. Some kind of breakdown, maybe. High guilt, finally catching up. Dirk?
The footage would confirm his story. Shelly entering alone, no other visitors, because he'd used her own techniques against her, editing himself out with the same software she'd used to edit him into scenes of horror. Ruben looked between Dante and Shelly, understanding dawning like a terrible sunrise.
The underwear thing?
Never happened. Check the dates. I was in the hospital. Real records, paper ones, filed before she could alter them.
Dante pulled out a folder, thick with evidence he'd hidden in a safety deposit box the day after their coffee shop breakup, some instinct warning him to preserve what he could.
She's done this to 47 men that we know of, probably more.
The paralysis wore off 3 hours later, but by then, the police had arrived, had seen the evidence, had matched her fingerprints to crime scenes she'd fabricated, DNA to planted evidence, facial recognition to security footage she'd doctored. The investigators found her tools, her methods, her detailed notes on destroying lives for the sin of romantic rejection. She screamed the truth that Dante had done this, had paralyzed her, had framed her with her own methods. But who would believe such an elaborate story? The security footage showed her alone. The medical examiner found no injection site, the paralytic having been designed to dissolve without a trace. Her history of elaborate deceptions made her the perfect, unreliable narrator.
Classic persecution complex.
The court psychologist testified at her competency hearing.
She's created an elaborate fantasy where she's the victim of her own crimes.
They sentenced her to psychiatric treatment, indefinite hold, the same fate she'd condemned 2 of her victims to. Dante attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery where she could see him, making sure she watched as he slowly rebuilt his life with the insurance money from the false accusations, the defamation settlements from the companies that had believed her lies, the crowdfunding from other victims who saw him as a hero. On the last day, as they led her away, she looked back at him, and he smiled. Not his normal smile, but hers, the one she'd worn while destroying him piece by piece. He'd learned it from watching her surveillance videos, practiced it in mirrors until he could reproduce it perfectly.
Spark enough for you,
he mouthed. She lunged at him, screaming, frothing, exactly as he'd known she would. The guards restrained her, sedated her, the outburst adding years to her sentence, proving her instability, her danger to others. Dante walked out of the courthouse into bright sunshine, his phone buzzing with messages from Renee, from his mother, from friends welcoming him back to the land of the living. He deleted Tinder from his phone, then all dating apps, then threw the phone itself into a trash can. Some lessons he'd learned were written in scar tissue. Some teachers taught by example of what not to become, and some sparks, once ignited, burned everything to ash before you could remember what you'd been trying to illuminate in the first place. He thought about Shelly sometimes, in her padded room, screaming the truth to walls that didn't care, living the nightmare she'd crafted for others. There was no satisfaction in it, no joy, just a hollow recognition that they'd both become monsters in the end, creatures shaped by the digital age's capacity for infinite deception, for reality that could be edited, uploaded, destroyed with a few keystrokes. But at least his monster walked free. The coffee shop on 5th Street closed 6 months later. The owner said it had developed a reputation, become cursed in the local imagination. People claimed to see things there. A woman in a red dress who appeared in photographs but never in person. A man sitting alone at a corner table who vanished when approached. Conversations that played on loop when the shop was empty, the same words over and over.
You're amazing, but
But not for you.
It's not you, it's me.
No hard feelings.
The building stood empty for years, accumulating urban legends, ghost stories, cautionary tales about modern dating. Teenagers dared each other to spend the night there. They always left before dawn, claiming they'd heard something, seen something, felt something, watching them from the corner table. Maybe it was Shelly, somehow projecting herself from her padded cell. Maybe it was Dante's guilt, manifested in brick and mortar. Or maybe it was just the echo of every relationship that ended badly, every heart that broke in public, every person who'd ever discovered that the one sitting across from them wasn't who they'd pretended to be. The city eventually demolished the building. They found nothing unusual in the ruins. No bodies, no evidence, no explanation for the stories. Just rubble and dust, and in the corner where the table had been, a single photograph, 2 people, faces obscured by coffee steam, frozen in that moment before everything went wrong. The developer who bought the land tried to build condos, but the foundation kept cracking, the walls kept shifting, as if the ground itself had been poisoned by what had happened there. Eventually, they paved it over, made it a parking lot. But on certain nights, when the moon was dark and the streetlights flickered, locals claimed you could still hear it. The sound of a coffee cup being set down, a chair scraping back, footsteps walking away. And then, always, that same bright chime of a bell that had never existed, marking an exit from a door that was no longer there.